And I went, oh, so their success is tied to improving the consumer experience and bringing in inventory that consumers want, like, and need. That's an interesting concept. It's been an interesting news cycle. So I want to give you a couple of talking points, or at least make you aware of them. The first one, 50-year mortgages are out. We announced these several months ago, and apparently it took them this long to do the math and discovered that that's really a stupid idea. So 50-year mortgages are out, but shortly after that announcement, they allocated $200 billion for mortgage-backed bonds. $200 billion. Now, what is that going to do to the market? $200 billion. And what they're saying is, we're going to set aside $200 billion. These can now buy mortgage-backed securities. What does that do to the market? Think through it. Rationalize. $200 billion enters the marketplace. What happens? Do rates go up or do rates go down? Okay, let's change. Let me try this a different way. If you think $200 billion made available to buy mortgage-backed securities makes rates go up, raise your hand for up. Okay? And if you think it makes them go down, raise your hand if you think it makes it go down. All right? And how many aren't sure and too scared to raise your hand and be wrong? All right, thank you. I appreciate that honesty. That's great. It actually drives rates down, because what it does is it floods the market with a bunch of cash that has to go somewhere. The worst position you can be in is sitting on a bunch of cash that's not earning any rates of return. So the government basically said, here's 200 billion bucks, we need to deploy it, so let's get it into mortgage loans. Here's how that resulted in rates. Do we have that? Okay. So while you guys are looking at rates here, I'm going to share with you the commentary, again from my mortgage guy. His name is Greg Wilcox. Here's what he says. He says, good morning, Lee. Rates made progress late last week after the $200 billion mortgage bond purchase announcement gave rates a solid push lower. Some gains faded as Fed independence headlines rattled the market, but the support is real and the floor looks firmer. Short-term noise aside, the bond market still anticipates gradually lower rates ahead. Make it a great week. Now remember, we're getting a new Fed chair in May. That's at least what we're anticipating, who it is believed is going to drive rates down even lower. I'm still holding my prediction. Rates will be at 5.5 by March, and we're seeing that trending. Okay, so for the first time, we have 5 categories under the 6% on the rate, but the APRs still only 1. But look at the FHA 30-year fixed sitting at 6.031. VA has gone lower. It's now at 5.621. USDA 30-year at 6.15. First-time homebuyer at 6.2. And the conventional 30-year at 6.003. And if they could just get that thing to drop below 6, we'd see movement. Even though it's 3 bips, we'd still see movements as a result of that. So watch what goes on there. Another announcement this week. Trump has made some waves. I guess you don't really need to say that. You just say Trump. And the waves are assumed. Single-family homes cannot be purchased by corporations, Wall Street, or private equity. How do y'all feel about that? That's an interesting thing, which means corporations can't come in and buy an entire subdivision. It can only be sold to single-family owner-occupants or one-off investors like us. How do we feel about this? Is this good? Yes. Who thinks this is a good thing? All right, who thinks this is a bad thing? All right. Interesting. Here's what happens. When Wall Street doesn't buy real estate, we, as the owner-occupants, have a greater opportunity to buy real estate. This is going to help a lot with the number of available properties. So inventory should go up. Now, is it going to pass? Probably not. Now, why is all of this happening? Well, before I jump into that, one other big announcement last week, a proposal that consumer credit cards are capped at 10%. Right now they cap at 29.99. So essentially Trump is saying, all you banks that are sitting on trillions of dollars in consumer debt, you need to reduce your fees by 2/3 because it's just not affordable for consumers. Now, when Trump says, banks, you can't make 30% on your money. What are the banks going to do with their money? They're going to stop lending it. And consumers suddenly don't have any buying power because they buy stuff even at 29.99%. So if that passes, it's just going to mean that most people who rely on credit cards to cover bills and everything else aren't going to have those lines of credit. Now, it takes me back to 2008, and I'll never forget 2008. I was in Austin, Texas. I had an American Express Platinum card with an unlimited spending amount, and we ran the business on it. So we would put all of our marketing on it, all of our expenses on there, and we'd rack that thing up, a couple $100,000 a month, and then pay it off. So it was odd to me when I went to the Starbucks in the hotel where we were doing an event, and my card declined for, at the time it was a $3 cup of coffee, now it would be a $9 cup of coffee. But at the time it was $3, and the lady says, "I'm sorry, your card's been declined," and I'm like, "That's an American Express Unlimited Platinum card. What do you mean my card's been declined?" And she says, "I don't know. Call your bank." So I called American Express and I said, "Hey, what's the deal?" And they said, "Oh, right, about that. We've taken all of the unlimited spending cards for anybody who's in the real estate business, and we've capped them for what they owe." And they completely whacked my line, which meant to use the card, I had to pay it down. So I paid the card down a couple $1,000 and I went to use it, and guess what happened? It declined again because they kept readjusting them down. What they were doing is they were reducing their exposure to anybody who was in the real estate space or the building space, because remember, this is 2008, and what was happening in 2008? Now, this was like May of 8. What happened in August? Bear Stearns went down. What happened in September? Lehman Brothers went down, and then the whole thing just started tanking. So when we see things like this, it gives us insight as to what's coming. So I don't have any insight as to what's coming. I don't have a crystal ball. But I can tell you this 10% thing's not going to fly. Because if it did, it would stall the economy. Because so many people live on credit that if that were to occur, it'd be very bad. Now, why is Trump proposing all of these things? Here's why. Congress is set for a busy and raucous 2026 despite the looming distraction of the November midterms. So there you go, right? So understand what is political theater, right? And right now, Trump doesn't need his rich friends that run banks who buy single-family homes or rich people who finance 29.99% credit card lines to consumers. Who's he trying to win over right now? Voters. So it's all about the voters. So it's all about the headlines to ensure he keeps the House and the Senate in the November midterm elections. So you're going to be seeing a lot of this stuff. Don't let it sway you. The only thing that matters is what's going to get passed. That's the only thing you need to be watching for. In the meantime, it makes for very interesting conversation and very interesting headlines. But I don't think many of these things are actually going to take place other than the $200 billion has been allocated and they need to get it deployed. Retail. As e-commerce grows, brick and mortar shows signs of resilience. One interesting example, this one fascinates me, bookseller Barnes & Noble, which is rebounding after many years of seeing Amazon take over the book market. Now the retail chain is opening many new stores, thanks to serious readers' preference for physical books and physical stores in which to browse and buy them. The internet is even helping due to growing popularity of book lovers groups on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Is anybody part of these book lover groups? Your wife is? Anyone else? You are, Michelle? Do you guys just read a book like the old Oprah thing? Yep. And so do you go meet them at Barnes & Noble and drink coffee and discuss the book? You drink wine? at Barnes & Noble? Oh. I was like, oh, that makes more sense. They're serving booze. Okay. One key to Barnes & Noble's recent success, catering to local tastes at its different stores. Rather than building and stocking according to a single template, along with emphasizing their core product books over time that big sellers dominate. And I went, oh, so their success is tied to improving the consumer experience and bringing in inventory that consumers want, like, and need. That's an interesting concept. It reminded me of the old famous story of Lee Iacocca, who was brought in, this in the mid-70s. Chrysler is failing. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. And Lee Iacocca is the new CEO. He walks in there and he goes, "What do our customers want?" And nobody could give him an answer. What do our customers want? Nobody knew. So he polled his customers. You know what they wanted? They wanted cheap, affordable convertibles. So he whacked the top off a Chrysler LeBaron and made a convertible, the top-selling convertible in the history of the world to this point. He says, what else do they want? Well, they want more room. So he invented the minivan, and that's been doing okay. So there's wisdom in asking the customer, what do you want? How can we better serve you?
If you want to learn more, just click the link below.